Okay, everybody, this is Marcel Pertut, the Sports Inquirer, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Fighting Peaches, where we preview Georgia State football's upcoming matchup against Appalachian State, as well as a look at the rest of the Sun Belt Conference. As always, if you want to follow everything that we do, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. I'm going to plug it here right now, but we'll do it later on in the show as well. Be sure to go to the site right now and see our exclusive interview with Georgia State running back Tucker Gregg. We were able to speak with him for this upcoming contest against Appalachian State, and it was a really good in-depth interview with him and things going on in his world and with Georgia State. So make sure you head to the site to check that out. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. You do go on there and you'll be able to see all of our updated content and everything that we have going on. You can also go to our audio and video host, such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. Do a search on there, and you'll be able to see all that we have going on. So, yes, we're recording this on October 1st, 2021. Usually, the change in the calendar to the month of October means that we're fully entrenched in conference play and college football, and the Sun Belt is no exception to that. All right, let's start with the Georgia State contest against Appalachian State. Georgia State coming off of a tough loss to Auburn last week. They led the contest for the majority of the event and even had I think it was 22-12 lead at some point in the contest, but they lost and have to move on from that, and they're going to do that by hosting Appalachian State in a Sun Belt competition, as I mentioned. So, yeah, as I said, Panthers, they had a very tough non-conference slate. They faced two nationally ranked Power 5 foes in North Carolina and Auburn, and they went to those venues and also played undefeated Army, a team that has had a very good run so far this year, and Charlotte. And Charlotte came into that contest undefeated. And right now, the records for those four teams that Georgia State has played so far this year, their combined record is 12-4. So a very tough non-conference slate for the Panthers. And here is head coach of Georgia State, Shawn Elliott, on the team's areas of improvement that they have acknowledged and noticed through that non-conference slate.
Run defense and run the football. I mean, we've certainly established that defensively. I mean, our overall defense has been really good. I mean, it's been coming along, and it's it's great to see them flying around out there this past Saturday and making play after play after play, and then also for us to have the ability to go and rush for, the way we did on Saturday as well. So I think those are two of the big areas of improvement that we've hit on. We've certainly got a lot more improvement to do. We've got some areas that need a little bit more improving than others, but we've addressed them, and we've started doing some things that I feel are necessary to make us a better football team heading into our conference slate.
They have found a solid running game with those non-conference contests. They had 267 rushing yards against Auburn, led by a career-high 150 by Tucker Gregg. Once again, go to our website to see that interview or hear it from our interview with Tucker and everything going on with him. But Darren Granger, who made his second start for Georgia State to transfer from Furman, came in as a replacement for incumbent starting quarterback from last year, Cornelius Quad Brown. And in the second start of the season, Granger had 61 rushing yards and threw touchdown passes to Roger Craig and Jamari Thrash. So Granger has established himself as the starter of the team. And here is Elliott on Granger and what he has seen from him.
We struggled throwing the football. I mean, there were some things that we missed from a read perspective, as well as just throwing the football and getting it in the position for our receivers to make plays. So I wouldn't say it was just a crisp contest by him throwing the football. His run game right there, I think it was on point. I mean, he did a really good job in there. I think he rushed for somewhere around 70 yards or whatever it is, minus the sacks probably, and did a good job in the running game. But, we can't be that one-dimensional. We've got to have our throw game. We've got to work hard this week on our throw game. And we've got to have a really, really balanced attack to really go and start pushing those points. I mean, it's one thing to run the football well, but you're not really pushing the points unless you can get that thing in combination with the run and pass.
And I know that he mentioned, or Coach Elliott mentioned in the comments we had earlier about areas of improvement, stop rushing the ball and stopping the run. Georgia State's actually done a pretty solid job of stopping the run after having issues against Army and North Carolina. They've improved that aspect of the game. They held Auburn to 167 rushing yards and didn't allow an offensive touchdown until that last possession by Auburn was the game winner. So they have done a very good job of limiting the rushing of the offensive opponents. And they also, overall, they've done a good job as well. They held Charlotte to only 276 total yards in their 20-9 victory 2 weeks ago against the 49ers. But this will be a tough task for Georgia State against Appalachian State, who rushed for 283 yards in their 31 to 30 comeback victory against Marshall last week. So that's going to be a and they erased a 9-point fourth quarter deficit in that victory. App State, one of the top rushing teams in the conference and in the country. Here is Coach Elliott on defending Appalachian State and that rushing attack.
Well, they've run the football well. I mean, since they come into this conference, that's their motto. They want to run the football. They run a little inside outside zone. They've got great backs. They've got very well agile, tough, hard nosed offensive line, and they got great play calling that puts them in a situation to be successful. You watch a lot of these teams and then they just run the football to run the football. They don't really know a why or a how, and they just call it. But these guys, they've got great film study. They know where to attack the edges. They know who to push around up front, where to attack personnel wise, and they do a great job with it. But they are without a doubt. I mean, they can run the football on anybody. I mean, just sitting here watching them play the Hurricanes in Miami, and they steamrolled over those guys. And everybody probably thinks Miami has a pretty good, talented defensive front, and they were whipping them all day long.
It's an interesting meeting for Coach Elliott as well. Appalachian State is his alma mater. He graduated from there in 1996. Spent 13 years on the App State staff under head coach Jerry Moore, and helped lead the Mountaineers to 3 FCS titles while he was an assistant with the program. And I should have asked Coach about this as well. They just erected or built a statue for Jerry Moore that's on the campus of App State or near the stadium. So a lot of ties there between Appalachian State and Georgia State. But Georgia State is still looking for his first win against Appalachian State. Last year, the Mountaineers scored a go-ahead touchdown with 5 minutes to go and defeated Georgia State at Appalachian 17 to 13. Cameron Peebles had a 10-yard rushing touchdown that proved to be the game winner for the Mountaineers. And Georgia State did a good job defending Appalachian State in that contest, held the Mountaineers to a season low of 310 total yards in that contest, but 77 of those yards came in the game-winning drive. And Peebles is back as well, and a lot of other of the running backs and the offensive line that played in last year's contest and rushed for nearly 300 yards last week against Marshall. So it should be a quick game, I'll say that, because both teams do like to run the ball, especially with Granger installing himself into the lineup. The Panthers still dealing with injuries, especially McCoy on the offense for the receivers. It's just been they've been dealing with some of those things, so they're going to probably rely on the run a lot more. Greg should get a big run, a lot of action. Dustin Coates should see a lot of running action as well. I think it'll be a very competitive contest. And yeah, it's going to be, I think that Appalachian State does come in as the favorite in this contest. But Georgia State's rush defense, if they can hold them and limit them to not 200 plus yards, it could be a very competitive contest. So we're looking forward to seeing that contest and seeing what's going to happen there. As far as the rest of the Sun Belt, as I said, we're fully entrenched in conference action, and that includes South Alabama hosting Louisiana. South Alabama, probably the surprise team in the conference, won its first 3 games of the season under Coach Womack, a new head coach with the program. But this will be their toughest test of the season so far when they have to go to Lafayette and face Louisiana. Now, Lafayette was able to win their contest last week, 28 to 20, at Georgia Southern. So that was a very crucial victory for Louisiana. Levi Lewis had 249 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in that victory. So Louisiana, they came in as the conference favorite from the Western Conference, but South Alabama is making their presence felt and playing really well also. So that'll be a very interesting contest. I said South Alabama maybe surprised the conference, but you also have to say Louisiana Monroe. The Warhawks defeated Troy 29-16 last week, earning back-to-back victories for the first time since a string of 4 straight wins back in 2018. Remember, the Warhawks did not win a game last season, winless, but they already have 2 victories this year. Coach Bowden is doing a tremendous job with that program, and beating Troy is nothing to ignore. That's a very big win for the Warhawks. They do face Coastal Carolina, probably the nationally ranked Chanticleers. Got to give them credit. They're ranked 17th in the nation right now. They had a non-conference contest against Massachusetts, defeated them 53-3. Pretty straightforward effort by Coastal Carolina. Their defense has been very stout this year. They allowed only 28 rushing yards in that victory over UMass, the fewest since Coastal became a full-time FBS member in 2017. Coastal's also 4-0 on the season for the 5th time in program history. And last time they did it was last year, back in 2020. So this will be a very big test for Coach Bowden and the Warhawks, having to go not across the country, but away from Monroe into Conway, South Carolina. You got to think Coastal's the favorite to win that contest, but the Warhawks are making major strides in the program. And I think when it comes down to Coastal, they to win this contest, it's going to come down to they don't get Louisiana's not on the schedule on the slate, and they may see them in the conference championship game, but it comes down to beating Georgia State and beating Appalachian State. Those are probably the 2 teams on the Eastern Division that are going to be their biggest challengers. We can't lose to the Warhawks if you want to contend for what they want to contend for. So that should be an interesting contest just for the storylines of Monroe, trying to continue to build on this improvement of their program, and then Coastal trying to keep things going where they are. Georgia Southern hosts Arkansas State. This is Southern's first game since firing Chad Lumsford as the head coach of the program. So they lost that contest, as I mentioned, to Louisiana. The next day, fired Chad Lumsford. They're really trying to rehab that program and get it to the levels that they want it to be, which is kind of confusing to me because they had multiple bowl appearances under Lunsford and had a winning record. Even last year, they had a winning record and won a bowl game. And 3 games into the season, I know they've had a slow start to their campaign, or 4 games into their season, and you fire him. Something's odd going on in Statesboro, and I still think, as I said last week, more information is going to come out about that because there's no USC pulled it off, and with the firing of Clay Helton, that's USC. The standards are very, very high at USC, and not saying the standards aren't high at Georgia Southern. And yes, I know about Irk Russell and Paul Johnson and all the national championships won in the 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s. It's a different era right now, and I just don't understand what that move was. But they got to get back on the field and face Arkansas State, that is coming off of a 41-34 loss at Tulsa last week. So this is a contest. Both these teams really want to get a conference win, and you got to look at the numbers as well, get the bowl eligibility, get to those 6 wins, and put themselves in a position to do that. And then Troy visits South Carolina in a non-conference contest. That's a Troy's coming off of that loss to Monroe. Very tough for the Trojans going into South Carolina against that SEC foe and getting a victory. But so they're trying to progress their season and keep things moving. And that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to this episode. And as always, go to thesportsinquirer.net and also our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages under Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under the Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, and be safe.